The Red Cross has more than 21,000 volunteers on the ground in places devastated by Hurricane Helene. And with Milton on the way, so are more volunteers. The Red Cross has volunteers working in shelters and are looking for more to support those and feeding programs. While most of the shelters are set up, additional work includes getting basic items ready to distribute and making sure people have access to Red Cross support services. The executive director of the Red Cross Southern Tier chapter says although there are already a lot of volunteers, even more are needed.
Or maybe even a little hesitant is to reach out and start the process, fill out the application. You're not committing yourself to anything by expressing interest. And what we can do is have you talk to somebody. We do have classes in person where you can meet some disaster responders and see what it's like, see what those expectations are.
He says people who are volunteering should know what they are getting themselves into.
We also are pretty clear with what the expectations will be for individuals when they're going down. You won't be staying in a hotel. Right now, hotels probably aren't very accessible. You might be staying in a staff shelter, which could be it could have multiple people in one room, could be private rooms. It depends on the situation and what's available. A disaster response, nothing can really be truly pre-planned to its fullest. You have to kind of pivot depending on what's available and what's happening.
He adds even if you are unable to help right now, you can still get training for future opportunities. On top of financial donations, you can also sign up to donate blood and platelets as there is still a need.